Hey guys, good morning. It is Monday. We just got to Easter weekend. And we have some stuff to talk about. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen today, but I did want to make sure to come and talk with you. I've been in Austin for the weekend, and usually when I do that, I postpone today's live for Tuesday, but I'm a little early. So here I am. And we're going to chat about what happens when you have multiple food allergies in one house. That's our topic for today. It is a challenge that I find a number of clients, a number of new people come to me, and they talk about how they've discovered that they have issues with these foods, but then their partner or kids or other people in the house have issues over here. And they don't really blend well. Like, what happens if you have an issue with pork and somebody else has an issue with poultry? I have an issue with pork and beef. My husband, chicken and turkey. How do you navigate that? The kids have, just the dairy sensitivity. So far, that's everything. But there are households among my clients and people I've worked with in the past where there are 4 to 6 people in a home, and each and every single one of them has completely different issues. And when you're trying to navigate recipes, meal planning, things like that, and you're not a professional chef, you're just trying to feed your family, what do? How do you navigate all of that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So buckle up. This is going to be a short and sweet one. There really isn't a lot to tell you about it. It is simple, it is easy, it is really not that overwhelming, but when it first happens, it feels like the weight of the world has just been put onto all of your shoulders. I get it. I really get it. When Brian's test came back, we weren't even pregnant yet, and both of us were like, oh, well, crap. So that means we're eating a lot of fish, we're doing a lot of vegan dishes, and at the time, it really was a challenge because we had gotten into this mode. And the number of families in this country, okay, and I don't know what the stats are with the world, but generally, we tend to have 12 recipes, okay? As Americans, we have 12 recipes that we just kind of cycle through, right? Sometimes it's as high as 20, but there are recipes that you kind of gravitate back towards, but you start living life, and all of a sudden, these are the foods that you're making, and then, oh, I'm a little bored, so I'm going to start making these. If you haven't really looked at it and haven't considered it, I invite you to do that. Because when I first heard that, I was like, no, I make a new recipe every week. I do. However, I still gravitate back toward the same 12. Now, they're a little bit different today as far as what's in them because of what we've gone through. Now, when Brian and I first discovered his true root issues with food, and then we really explored mine a little bit more because they gravitated and kind of melded into a lot of other things that I wasn't aware of initially when I first did my elimination diet. And I hadn't been tested up until about, I think it's been 4 years now, maybe 5. We both did food allergy testing, sensitivities, intolerances, the whole 9 yards. We went full Monty, you guys. And we discovered a lot of things, a lot of things. And it was interesting because it was just he and I, and it felt overwhelming. And that kind of sent me on another research project and another mission. For those of you who don't know me, me stop right here real quick and just interject. My name is Bonnie Wilson-Heiss. I am a nutritionist. I have been for many, many years, and my number one goal is to help you overcome chronic inflammation, to reduce it so that you reduce pain, you reduce discomfort, you reduce skin irritations, you name it. We're going to eradicate it and make a much healthier world. I promise it is not that hard to do. It is not as overwhelming as marketing makes it sound. And my goal is to make sure that the easy strategies and tips and tricks are out there. So for today, we're going to focus on what happens when you have 2 or more people. And I'm talking to the households who have 4+ people. I get you. I understand how challenging this can be, especially when everybody has a different issue. I've heard from clients that it feels like their teenagers are now toddlers again. You know, like they have to navigate all these likes and dislikes and things like that. Yes and no. So this isn't about likes or dislikes. This is about how your body is going to react, right? And 9 times out of 10, you will find in your neighborhood, you are not alone. Here's why I know this to be true. There are 32 million Americans who suffer from food allergies, intolerances, or sensitivity. That's only the people who have been tested, lab tested. That does not include those of us who have identified those food sensitivities and intolerances or allergies and haven't taken a lab test. So if 32 million Americans have already been lab tested and have sensitivities on record, can you imagine how many more of us there are? So the fact that we have households where these things are conflicting makes sense. For instance, someone that I've worked with, she has a dairy, an intolerance. She has issues with coconut milk. Partner has issues with nuts, all nuts. Now, up till recently, we didn't have oat milk, right? So now we have oat milk. We have an alternative. But up to that, they basically were resorting to eating foods that didn't have a creamy base. A lot of the vegan cheeses, cream cheeses, dairy products, dairy-like products are made from either nut milk or coconut milk. And yes, oat milk is kind of coming out there, but before the last couple of years, they had nothing to go on with their house because they either had to make it so that it accommodated one half of their house or the other. There is a way to accommodate both sides, okay? And it involves using extra dishes. So my number one suggestion is to create bases. Okay, you have a base recipe, and then from that base recipe, you split however you need to, and you continue those recipes, okay? So in this example, on one side, it would be oat milk, okay, or dairy, and on the other, it would be coconut or almond milk or cashew milk or whatever, all right? So you get 2 different dishes, same meal. If you create a base recipe for the bulk of what you are making, then it's much easier to pull out a little bit, continue to make that, right? Without feeling like you have to buy 4 different refrigerators full of food, right? This person's grocery list, and this person's grocery list, and this person's grocery list. There's also a number of recipes out there where modifications are actually a lot easier nowadays. If you aren't in if you're not in my private Facebook group or on the app, a lot of the people who are already there have either worked with me in the past or have connected with me because of their own sensitivities and intolerances. And these are people that for years have had to navigate multiple food issues within one household, right? We've got professional chefs. We got our coach, KJ McDaniel. I mean, she has been food guru for years. And among all of these people, myself included, there is a solution. Someone somewhere has a solution for this, right? Having just your base recipe allows you to kind of look at it and go, okay, so here are our issues. How can I create this from this base? Where do I need to infuse alternatives, right? Swapping recipes out. So I always say it's like for like. So if you see dark leafy greens on a recipe, you want dark leafy greens to replace that dark leafy green, right? Kale, spinach, doesn't matter. Replace. I see a recipe that has kale in it, I automatically replace it with spinach, Swiss chard, anything but kale. Has nothing at all to do with sensitivities. I simply cannot stand kale. And thankfully neither can my husband. But that is just an example of how you can replace like for like. Okay. Nightshades, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers. Peppers are very challenging, especially if you have sensitivities or allergies. Morning. To anything, okay, to any of the nightshades. It's challenging because there are so many recipes that have peppers, right? And are you going to change the flavor of the food if you take the peppers out? It depends on the recipe. And a lot of times what you can do is you can actually kind of infuse other foods in there so that what you're doing is, hey, Mandy, I was just talking about you, Chickadee. I didn't say your name, but I was just talking about you. If you're on Facebook, the comment you just saw, she's one of our people. She's one of the, she knows this topic very, very, very well. Now, when you see a recipe and you've got peppers infused into it, right? It's part of that recipe. Yes, the flavor is going to change. Someone who has a sensitivity or an intolerance to peppers, you can't replace a pepper for a pepper. There's no replacement for it. So that's the point where you're going to need to take base recipe and split off for that person or those people. And ultimately what you're doing is, yes, you're making 2 dishes, but yep, 4 people in a household. See? And we have plenty more stories in this group. This is not a challenge that you're facing on your own. So when you split off, I know you're probably thinking, well, that means I'm making multiple meals. Standard stovetops have 4 burners, correct? Normal households have multiple skillets, multiple pots, right? So if you have someone with an allergy, you want a designated set for them so that there's no cross-contamination. If there's one person has issues, like when we make mac and cheese here, the boys can actually eat cheese. They can't have milk, they can't have yogurt, they react to those. But when we do it, we make all the pasta together, and then my part, the pasta gets pulled out, and I continue making the sauce in a smaller pan because it's just me versus 3 other people. And while that may seem overwhelming right now, yes, you get used to it, and the only thing you're really doing is adding to the dishes that you have to wash. I mean, ultimately, that's really all you're doing, is you're just adding to the number of dishes that you have to wash because you're going to have to separate it. It is the safest way to do it. And when we look at what we're buying, right? We buy typical mac and cheese ingredients, we all are not drinking milk, right? So there's certain things in your house that you need to look at. Look at your food sensitivities, look at your allergies, see if there are things that you can combine. So let's say you have someone who can drink dairy and someone who can't, right? Or someone who can have dairy and someone can't have dairy and can't have coconut milk. Well, that leaves you using non-alternatives, and it leaves you using oat milk, right? So then as a household, what you want to do is look at this and say, all right, which one are we going to buy? Are we going to alternate? Which is actually what I recommend doing, because overconsumption leads to sensitivities, intolerances. Your body gets bored, and all of a sudden it's like, we don't need this anymore. It happens. Now, that is going to be the most budget-friendly method. The easiest, least stressful, is to just come together and say, okay, what are our common foods that everybody in the house can eat? And those are the foods that everybody in the house eats. Because when you go out to eat, you can order it however you want. Make your list of common foods, right? Whatever they are, common foods. That way, your budget isn't overwhelmed. You aren't overwhelmed. It creates a much better base recipe situation, okay? And I keep coming back to this base recipe because that's ultimately what you're going to do, is you're going to take your base recipe and you're going to make the bulk of whatever your meals are so that it can accommodate everybody in the household. If you're, like, one example is the chicken and dill sauce that I put on the meal plan this month. There are a number of people who have actually reached out to me behind the scenes and said, okay, but I can't do coconut milk. Is there an alternative? And yes, there is. I had someone reach out to me. She couldn't do coconut milk. I think her husband couldn't do nut milk, and the kids couldn't do oats or something along those lines. And what that boiled down to is you're going to have to make 2 separate sauces. Is it a pain in the butt? Sometimes, but like I said, it's just an extra dish. If you put both pans side by side, you're going to use both at the same time. Okay, you're going to cook both right at the same time. You're not going to cook one and then cook the other. You're going to make your base recipe and then split it up. You don't need to put, I've tried to make both in separate, and that does work, but I have found if you make the bulk of the recipe, the base part, as one. So with the chicken and dill sauce, for example, you're going to make the seasonings, you're going to make the sauce, then you pull that out, you cook the chicken, and then the sauce comes back in. So you can actually create the sauce first, and then put your chicken into the sauces after the chicken's been cooked on its own, right? Separate from either dish. It's an extra pan to wash. If it's going to keep your stress levels down to just have an extra pan to wash, it is worth it. Because navigating multiple food issues in one household can really feel like you are trying to fit 4 different grocery lists, 4 different recipes into one meal. And unless you're a professional chef who is used to doing so in restaurants, that feels so overwhelming. And ultimately, it really doesn't need to feel like that. So I know this is going to mean that you have to take some steps, you have to do a little bit of research, but that little bit of front work is going to help you long term. Okay? Look at the foods that you gravitate toward. The 12 foods, remember we talked about everyone really has 12 to 20 foods that they just kind of rotate in and out. Look at those. What do you gravitate toward? I gravitate toward Mexican. I love Mexican food. So I gravitate toward that. I gravitate toward a lot of your traditional American meals like baked beans and mac and cheese and pizza and stuff like that. Um, it's a challenge to eat it a lot of the times, but it's okay. I figured out a way. I figured out a way that works. One of the things that Brian and I actually do when we go and we order pizza is we will get half vegan cheese and half regular cheese, and the pieces that cross over are the ones that we now give to the boys because they can do both, right? And I only want one or two slices of pizza anyway because I can have it and then I'm done. But that way we're only buying one pizza, and I know that the center portion on my half is going to be free of the food that I respond to, the food that knocks my butt out. Okay. These are things that we've discovered along the way, but we had to sit and look at both of our lists and compare them to the foods that we traditionally buy, the things that are just common in our household. And in doing so, we were able to navigate and figure out a better way. So with our mac and cheese, if we make, a lot of times I'll buy the Annie's organic for the boys, right? And for Brian, the box mac and cheese. And for me, I get the Mykonos farmhouse cheddar or another vegan cheese that melts well. Follow Your Heart melts well. The Daya is questionable. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't found it very helpful with mac and cheese, but the farmhouse cheddar, there's a block, and then there's like a container, like a little cream cheese container from the Mykonos, and I'm sure there's plenty of others. There is a restaurant in the Midwest called Three Vegan Girls or three vegan chicks, something like that. Amazing. They have phenomenal reviews. I'm gonna find out what that is. I'll put it under the comments for you guys. They do an amazing job with cheeses, and they're not alone. There's a lot of local places who do an amazing job with cheese. So for us, we have box mac and cheese for everybody else. I get my cheddar, and when I separate the macaroni, I put my cheddar in there, and I make my own sauce in my macaroni. And like lasagnas, any Italian dishes, the Mexican food. So whenever we do anything like that, a lot of times I'll do a buffet, kind of just put it out there. Salads, same thing. If we make any meat on the grill, like to meal prep, black bean burgers, any sort of vegan burger, that is going to be our core protein source, because we usually do, here's my protein source, and then here's everything else. So we'll do the core protein source in a way that everybody can eat it. And chicken and poultry, it's relatively simple. If you have a Mediterranean style marinade, like my favorite thing to do is take Italian dressing or some sort of dairy-free Caesar dressing, something along those lines, of balsamic vinaigrette. That is my all-time favorite, balsamic vinaigrette. And marinate your poultry with that. You now have a chicken that comes out or a turkey that comes out, and it can be not applied. That's it can be included in other recipes without making drastic changes to the flavor. Okay. Hold on, you guys. I forgot to. There we go. All right. Phone call coming through. Weird. So that's what you're looking for when you're looking at base recipe, is you're looking at things from that recipe. So like the starter part of it. With lasagna, you ground your meat, right? Or you brown your ground meat, right? Well, that meat has to go into something to create your layers. We create a smaller dish for me that is all the dairy-free stuff. And then we create another dish for Brian and the boys that has regular dairy stuff. And they cook in the oven at the same time. They're prepared in there at the same time. There's nothing wrong with the noodles. We don't, we all eat the same noodles. So the beginning stages of prep work are all the same. And at least 80% of the time, you will find that a lot of recipes are exactly the same way. So as you navigate your multiple sensitivities, multiple intolerances, allergies, whatever the case may be, really look at it from a standpoint of what is going to be the easiest way for me to do this. I have also found that as I'm doing this, it doesn't increase the amount of prep time. It doesn't. It takes me the same amount of time to make just mac and cheese for them as it does to make mac and cheese for them and me, because I have them on the stovetop at the same time. Mix in this one, mix in this other, let it all meld. Everyone's eating at the same time. Some of them, like the lasagna, you're layering things, that's going to take a few more minutes, but it really doesn't take that much more time. And the end result is that you now have meals that everybody can eat and eat together. And you're not making 4, 5, 6 different dishes every single time. You don't have to. Create your base recipe and adjust from there. Even if you have 6, you can figure out a commonality to create a much easier, streamlined way of feeding everybody in your house. If you have questions, definitely reach out, get into our group. I know Mandy has a lot of answers for you. She has a lot of insight. We got Kim in there as well, and many other people. I know Robin's got some in there. I don't see her on the list just yet. But I mean, they're just a handful of people. There's so many others in this group that have navigated this and have found very similar results. Is create the base, look at your recipes from where is the base, and how do I need to prep the additions to create something that everybody can eat and not have it take an additional amount of time. So that's everything I have for you. So like I said, short and sweet today. There's a lot of other tips and tricks for this that people have gone through over the years. And I invite you, if you have a tip or trick to add to this, comment. Let's share some of this. Using a base ingredient or base recipe and then adding to it has been the #1 way I have discovered and others have discovered to keep meal prep down, to keep stress down, to keep overwhelmed down, have everyone eating similar meals without it drastically impacting time, budget, or putting anyone else at risk. Or putting anyone at risk, I should say. So start using your base recipe. And like I said, if you have any questions, one of the things that I would suggest, if you do have questions on certain recipes, specific things, post the recipe up. We're happy to help. As always, reach out. There are links below in YouTube for website, different blogs. You'll see other videos that you can watch, tips and tricks. And join us on Thursday. We are going Asian fusion on Thursday. And then next week we start a whole new meal plan. So, or the end of next week. So we'll do our chicken and dill recipe next Thursday. But this week we are going Asian fusion. So I will chat with you guys later. I will see you all on YouTube on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great Monday, you guys. I hope you all had a wonderful Easter, and I will chat with you soon. Bye. Go be healthy.